Welcome to the Luxury Retail Market Podcast.
It's great to be here.
So today we're doing something a little bit different. Usually we'll take a specific vertical or one particular brand and really just tear it apart.
Get right into the weeds.
Exactly.
Right.
But today, given where we are on the calendar, it's January 2026, we thought we'd go wide. We're going to look at, the State of the Union for the entire luxury industry.
And it is a fascinating moment to be looking at the dashboard, isn't it? If you trace the trajectory from, say, the early 2020s to where we're sitting right now, it feels like we've lived through 3 different economic eras in, half a decade?
Truly.
Yeah.
It's been a ride. We're strategists here at the luxury retail market, and our job as a nonprofit is really to cut through all the marketing fluff and look at the actual mechanics of the industry. And when I look at the research stack we've pulled for this deep dive, one thing just screams out at me. We are finally exiting the turbulence.
We are. The analysts are calling 2026 a year of moderate expansion, which, after the Great Reset we saw in 2025 and all that chaotic volatility of the post-pandemic years, frankly, it just sounds like a relief.
Moderate expansion is code for sanity, I think.
It might be.
But before we get too comfortable, we have to acknowledge that the rules of the game have just fundamentally changed. We aren't just returning to the old ways, are we? We're seeing this shift from what a lot of the source material calls the McDonaldization of luxury to this new era of luxury 4.0.
That term McDonaldization, it always ruffles a few feathers when we bring it up in the boardroom.
It's provocative, but it's so accurate. But we're absolutely going to get into why logic is toxic to luxury and why the old org charts, the literal structure of these companies, are failing them.
Yeah.
But let's start with some context. We can't really understand 2026 if we don't look at the wreckage of the last 10 years.
Wreckage is a strong word. It wasn't all wreckage, but it was certainly a forced evolution.
Okay, fair enough. So let's unpack this McDonaldization concept. For a long time, arguably from the late 90s up until around 2020, luxury was just printing money. But the way they were doing it was, it was industrial.
It was standardization disguised as prestige. That's the best way I can put it. If you look at the strategy during that period, it was all about scaling at all costs.
Right.
You had these massive conglomerates just rolling out a cookie-cutter experience. A flagship store in Shanghai had to follow the exact same operational manual as a boutique in Milan.
Same windows, same greetings, same product drop schedule, the whole 9 yards.
Everything.
Which works wonders for a fast food franchise.
Yeah.
You want the fries to taste the same in Idaho as they do in Tokyo. That's brand consistency. But in luxury.
In luxury, consistency of that type becomes a liability. It kills the romance. It kills the dream. The sources describe this whole phase as promoting unluxury values.
Unluxury values. I like that.
Yeah. They were chasing volume and ubiquity. And look, while the balance sheets looked great for a while because they were opening stores in every Tier 2 city globally, they were eroding the very thing they sold. The ecosystem of surprise, the magic.
They traded exclusivity for accessibility. And then, of course, the world broke.
The pandemic, the great accelerator.
We don't need to rehash the misery of 2020, but strategically, it forced this digital pivot.
Yeah.
And I have to laugh when I look back at some of the source material from, say, 2018 or 2019. The arrogance of the industry back then about e-commerce was just staggering.
Oh, it was fear masked as tradition. I remember sitting in meetings with CEOs of these huge heritage brands who swore they would never, ever sell online.
Why? What was the logic?
They believed it would dilute the brand equity. The thinking was, if I put my 5,000 euro handbag next to a pair of socks on a screen, I lose my magic.
And then the market shrank by 20% overnight.
Exactly. And suddenly, that dilution didn't look so scary compared to, bankruptcy. But here is the nuance that I think is so critical for where we are in 2026. The digital pivot didn't just mean let's open a web store. It fundamentally broke the linear customer journey.
Right. It created what we now call the RPO model, research online, purchase offline, or, the reverse.
It blurred the lines entirely. The customer doesn't see channels anymore. They don't sit there thinking, oh, I am now shopping online versus I am now shopping offline.
No, of course not.
They're in a continuous loop. They see the product on social media. They check the specs on the brand's website. Maybe they chat with an AI styling assistant, and then they walk into the store to actually touch the leather.
Or they go to the store to try it on, realize they don't want to carry a giant box to dinner, and just order it on their phone while they're walking out the door.
Precisely. And the brands that won, look at Farfetch, raising almost $1 billion during that transition, or the digital native brands that are now opening physical spaces. They understood that digital isn't just a sales channel, it's an engagement layer.
It's the connective tissue. That's
Yeah.
the key.
And we cannot talk about this evolution without mentioning the geopolitical shockwaves. The 2024 A Luxury Goods Report in our research stack is pretty stark about this. The Russia-Ukraine war wasn't just a regional conflict. For this industry, it was a huge wake-up call about globalization risk.
The numbers were significant, weren't they?
Hmm.
I remember the analyst Lucas Solka estimated something like an €8 billion drop in luxury spending directly tied to that conflict.
That's the word. You had Hermes, LVMH, basically everyone suspending their operations. And it forced this realization that you can't just bank on endless, borderless growth. And this ties directly into the whole China conversation. Do you remember the predictions from 2019?
Oh, yeah. The inevitable dominance.
Everyone was saying the Chinese consumer would be 46% of the global market by 2025.
Right.
Well, here we are. It's 2026. Did that happen? Not exactly as predicted. The Chinese consumer is still a massive pillar, absolutely. But the market has matured. It's shifted. We're seeing incredibly strong indigenous brands in China taking real market share.
So the days of Western brands just showing up and collecting revenue are over.
They're long gone.
So the easy growth era is dead. The copy-paste store model is dead. And the idea that you can just ignore digital is dead. Okay, that sets the stage perfectly for today. Let's look at the human element. Who is actually buying luxury in January 2026?
This is where the data gets incredibly sharp. We are seeing a polarization of the customer base that is forcing brands to make some really hard choices. We have to talk about the true luxury pyramid.
The famous pyramid.
Yeah.
The stratification's getting aggressive, isn't it?
It's extreme. At the absolute peak, you have the VICs, the very important clients. The source data indicates that while this group is numerically tiny, we're talking less than 1% of the database often, they're generating upwards of 23% of the revenue.
That kind of leverage is just terrifying if you're a CFO. You lose a handful of people and you miss your quarter.
It is high risk, high reward. Within that VC tier, the BCG Altagamma reports identify a rapidly growing subsegment, the beyond money consumer.
I love that label. Beyond money. It implies they have so much of it that it's not even the metric they care about anymore.
That is exactly it. For this group, price is irrelevant. Status, at least in the traditional sense of showing off a logo, is also irrelevant because everyone they know has money.
So what do they value?
Culture, access, rarity, knowledge. This segment was predicted to triple in size by 2026, and we are absolutely seeing that play out right now.
So logically, every single brand should be obsessing over these people. They should know what they eat for breakfast. But the research highlighted the statistic that, frankly, it just blew my mind.
The 70% number.
Yes. 70% of potential VICs are not correctly identified by brands.
It is the single biggest operational failure in the industry right now. Full stop.
How do you miss the people giving you 23% of your money?
Because the CRM systems are archaic and the segmentation is just lazy.
Yeah.
Brands look at transaction history in a silo. They'll see a customer who bought one tie and just ignore them.
Okay.
They don't see that this same customer just bought a yacht. Or they fail to connect the online browsing behavior where the client spent, say, 3 hours looking at high jewelry with the person who walks into the boutique a week later.
So they're data-rich and insight-poor.
Exactly. They're leaving millions on the table because they can't connect the dots. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the pyramid, the foundation is crumbling. We need to talk about the aspirational consumer.
The person buying the entry-level wallet or the perfume. The State of Fashion 2026 report calls this a fading foundation.
And it's fighting because it has been priced out. We saw that huge spike in revenge buying right after COVID. Everyone was flushing their savings into treats.
Oh, it's over.
It's completely over. Inflation, combined with the really aggressive price hikes luxury brands implemented to chase that feeling of exclusivity, has created a wall.
I've seen this firsthand. Handbags that used to be, €1,500 are now $3,500. That's not just inflation. That's a strategy.
It's a strategy to elevate the brand, for sure, but the casualty is the aspirational buyer. They're becoming so much more price-sensitive and selective. They just aren't buying the filler products anymore.
So if the entry level is drying up and the top tier requires a level of service that most brands are, frankly, failing to deliver, where does that leave the generational shift? What about Gen Z and the millennials?
They are the ones driving the definition of value right now. In 2026, these cohorts are prioritizing exclusivity, polling 11 points higher than the average on that desire. But there's a twist.
Okay.
They also demand impact.
See, this is the paradox I struggle with. I want something that's rare and exclusive, but I also want it to be ethical and sustainable. Usually, green products are marketed as mass market solutions, not exclusive ones.
They're resolving that tension by changing what they buy.
Hmm.
They're shifting from just possessing goods to cultural awareness. Buying a sustainable, ethically sourced, rare item signals that you're educated. It signals you are in the know.
It's smart eyewear over fast fashion.
That's a perfect example from the report. Smart eyewear is the fastest growing accessory category right now. And why? Because it merges fashion, technology, and utility. It's a very 2026 flex.
It says I'm connected, I'm modern.
Exactly. And it's the same with investment jewelry. People are moving away from seasonal fashion that just goes in the landfill and toward hard assets that actually hold their value.
Okay, so we have the landscape. The easy growth is gone. The customer's polarized. The digital reality is completely non-negotiable. Now I want to get into the meat of this discussion. The strategy, the how.
This is where we separate the winners from the losers.
We have a lot of listeners who are sitting in strategy roles right now, trying to figure out how to navigate this year. And I want to focus on the STAR model by Galbraith. It's a classic framework, but its application for 2026 is so specific.
The STAR model is essential because it forces you to look at your organization design holistically. You have 5 points on the STAR: strategy, structure, processes, rewards, and people.
And the problem, usually, is that everyone just wants to redraw the org chart.
That is the structure trap. It's so common. Every time a new CEO comes in, what's the first thing they do? They shuffle the departments. Global marketing now reports to regional sales.
It feels like action.
It feels like action. It changes titles, it changes power dynamic, but in the context of 2026, structure is actually the least important lever you can pull.
Why is that?
Because structure is static, it's rigid, and the market is completely fluid. If you just change the boxes on the chart, but you don't change the processes, the information flows, you've achieved nothing.
Give me an example of a process failure.
Okay, let's take the VIC problem we just discussed. You can create a new role, a VP of VICs. That's a structure change.
Right.
But if the process of data sharing between your e-commerce team and your store managers is broken, if that Excel spreadsheet doesn't move seamlessly to the iPad in the store in real time, that VP can't do anything. The decision flow is completely blocked.
So the lines on the chart matter less than the invisible arrows of how information actually moves.
100%. And then look at rewards. This is where I see the biggest misalignment, honestly.
This is the you get what you pay for rule, right?
It is. Brands are telling their teams, we need to build long-term relationships, we need to nurture the client. But then the compensation plan is 100% based on monthly sales targets.
So the sales associate's just going to push the product to close the month, even if it annoys the client because they need to pay their rent.
You are actively incentivizing short-term transaction over long-term retention. That is a broken reward point on the STAR. If you say you want clienteling, you have to pay for retention metrics, not just volume.
This connects directly to the other big strategic concept in our stack, business model innovation. And the source material uses the Apple iPod analogy, which I think is just brilliant, even for fashion.
It's the Johnson et al. Framework. It challenges you to look at how you make money, not just what you sell. Apple didn't win because the iPod was the best MP3 player. There are others with better specs.
Oh, yeah, I had a Creative Zen back in the day.
Yeah.
It was technically superior, but it didn't matter.
It didn't matter one bit because Apple wrapped the hardware in a business model. Hardware plus software plus service, iTunes, the store. They created a lock-in ecosystem.
The famous reverse razor and blade model.
Right. Usually you sell the handle cheap and make all your money on the blades. Apple sold the blades, the songs cheap, to sell the high-margin razor, which was the iPod itself.
So how does a luxury brand apply this in 2026? Because they aren't selling 99-cent songs.
They need to realize that the bag is just the hardware. If they rely solely on the margin of that bag, they are incredibly vulnerable. They have to build the ecosystem around it. Resale services, repair programs, exclusive content, member-only events, digital twins for their products.
So you aren't just buying a purse, you're buying a membership to the brand's entire universe.
Exactly. And if that aspirational consumer is buying less product, you have to monetize the engagement of the VICs in other ways. Maybe the growth isn't in selling more bags, but in selling high-margin services around the collections. That is business model innovation.
Which brings us to implementation. Because you can have the STAR model on a whiteboard all day, but you have to execute. And this is where we get to my favorite phrase from the entire research stack.
I think I know which one.
Logic is toxic.
It is a bold statement, but in luxury, it is the law.
Okay, explain that. Because in any other business, logic is your best friend.
Of course, if you're selling a Toyota, you want the customer to use logic. You want them to compare the mileage, the trunk space, the warranty, the price. You win on the cost-benefit analysis.
The central question is this worth the money?
And that is the question you never want a luxury client to ask. Because if you look at a 20,000 euro handbag or a 50,000 euro watch, the answer to, is this logically worth the money based on materials and labor, is always, always no.
If they bring out the calculator, you've already lost the sale.
You have lost the magic. Logic kills emotion, and luxury is 100% emotion. The source material talks about creating a universe. When you walk into a store or visit the site, you shouldn't be thinking about features and benefits. You should be immersed in art, architecture, music, a dream.
The X factor.
Yes. The primary goal of the brand is to nurture its DNA. Sales are the consequence of a strong dream, not the target. If you aim for sales directly by highlighting features or, God forbid, discounting, you trigger the customer's logic brain. And once that logic brain turns on, a price tag just looks ridiculous.
Okay, so if sales is a dangerous target because it leads to bad behavior, how do we measure success in 2026? What are the KPIs?
We have to move toward impact metrics. And the first one we need to look at is the satisfaction gap.
Which is pretty grim right now from what I read.
It is. The data shows that less than 50% of luxury consumers are truly satisfied with their overall experience. That's an F grade for an industry that prides itself on service.
Why is it so low? What's the problem?
Friction. It's all about the gap between the digital promise and the physical reality. So the new KPI has to be seamlessness.
Seamlessness. That sounds a little vague. How do you measure something like that?
You measure the drop-off points in the journey. Can a client start a conversation on WhatsApp, walk into a store in London 2 days later, and have the sales associate know exactly what was discussed? Or do they have to start over from scratch?
Ah, I see.
Every single time they have to repeat themselves, your seamlessness score drops.
And the clienteling metrics need to evolve too, I assume.
No. Absolutely. We have to move from channel view, how much did e-commerce sell versus the retail stores, to customer journey view. What is the lifetime value of this client? How much cultural currency are we generating with this collection?
And sustainability. Where does that fit in?
It's no longer a corporate social responsibility footer on the website. It is a core KPI of cultural awareness. For the younger consumer, if you aren't hitting your sustainability targets, you are culturally irrelevant. You are, to use their term, cringy.
And being cringe is death in luxury.
It's absolute death.
So we have the history, the strategy, and the metrics. Let's look forward. We're standing here in January 2026. What does the forecast say for the next 12 to 24 months?
Well, as we mentioned at the top, the headline is stabilization. We're looking at growth rates of about 3 to 5% for personal luxury goods.
Which, coming off the roller coaster of the early 20s, feels manageable, healthy, even. But it's not evenly spread, is it?
Not at all. The divergence is real. Fashion and apparel are really struggling. We're talking low single digits.
And why is that?
The closet is full, and the prices are just too high for most people. But hard luxury, so jewelry and watches, that's seeing strong volume demand.
And that goes back to the investment mindset we talked about earlier.
Exactly. In uncertain times, people want to park their money in things that last. A diamond or a Patek Philippe feels like a safe harbor. A seasonal hoodie does not.
And internally, the industry is going through what the report calls the Great Reset.
The game of musical chairs. It has been absolutely unprecedented. In the 12 months leading up to September 2025, 9 of the top 15 luxury brands appointed new creative directors.
9 out of 15. That is massive turnover. That's not just normal attrition. That feels like panic.
Or reinvention. Brands are terrified of becoming stale in this new moderate market. They know they can't rely on the rising tide to lift all boats anymore. They have to swim. So they're bringing in new visionaries to try to spark that universe building we talked about.
And looking even further out, the Bain report casts a view toward 2035.
The long-term trajectory remains robust. They are forecasting the total luxury market to reach between 2.2 and 2.7 trillion euros by 2035.
Trillion?
But, and this is the key takeaway for me, that number includes luxury experiences, hospitality, travel, digital goods. The definition of the market itself is expanding, even if the sales of handbags stabilize.
So to synthesize all of this for our listeners,
Yeah.
we are entering 2026 with a need for real discipline. The McDonaldization party is officially over.
The era of copy-paste growth is finished.
And success now relies on that internal alignment, using that STAR model to fix the actual wiring of the company, not just redraw the org chart. It relies on solving that VSC data problem so you aren't ignoring your best clients.
And it relies on suppressing logic, on building that emotional value that justifies the price point.
I want to leave us with a thought that has been nagging at me while we prep for this. We see the aspirational consumer fading away. We see the ultra-wealthy demanding what money cannot buy. Things like access, knowledge, community. It makes me wonder if the most successful luxury brands of 2030 will actually sell fewer products.
That is a fascinating provocation.
Think about it. If we are moving from an economy of having an economy of being, maybe the ultimate luxury isn't owning the bag. Maybe it's having the key to the room where the bag is actually made. Maybe volume is the enemy of the future.
It connects right back to start reversing the industrialization. If you sell fewer things, but each one of those things carries more cultural weight and more service, you restore the value. It's a shift from consumption to communion.
From consumption to communion. I think that is the perfect tagline for the next decade of this industry.
I suspect we'll be coming back to that idea quite often.
We certainly will.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Luxury Retail Market Podcast. For deeper research, independent analysis, and long-form insights on the luxury retail industry, visit luxuryretailmarket.org. Subscribe to the show and consider supporting our mission of advancing the future of luxury retail through education, research, and collaboration. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed.